And Cheryl Morales was born in Punta Gorda town, Toledo, district in Belize, Central America. She was raised with her grandmother in the Garifuna village of Saint Bite. Oh, Saint Bite. And at the early age of 4, she migrated to Los Angeles, California with her parents. She works full-time as a psychiatric rehabilitation practitioner, specializing in mental health counseling and behavior modification. Cheryl is currently an MBA candidate in leadership and management at the Robert Kennedy College, York St. John University. As president and founder of Garifuna American Heritage Foundation United, she has had the opportunity to showcase her rich culture through its annual Garifuna Community Forum held in different colleges and universities around Los Angeles, as well as in the Bronx and Brooklyn in New York. The Garifuna Forum was also held at Los Angeles Southwest College, Cal State University, LA, and Cal State University, Northridge. Cheryl is one of the pillars of the Garifuna community in Los Angeles. To that end, she continues to promote all things Garifuna. She has received numerous awards and recognitions for her work from the Central American Studies program at CSU Northridge, the Belize Consulate General of Los Angeles, the St. Vincent and Grenadines Consulate General of Los Angeles, the Honduran Consulate General of Los Angeles, and from the Californian and New York State Assembly. Cheryl was inducted into the Charles E. Young Research Library at UCLA in 2009. Welcome, Cheryl. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, so I think we're going to, the mic was there. Yes, begin with Cheryl. She will give us a little background on what is it she do in the culture and the art form that she's going to be introduced to us from the Garifuna people.
Cheryl Morales, Garifuna Rulis Nubia, Patentinala. Good afternoon, my name is Cheryl Morales. I'm a proud Garifuna woman. I greet you in my indigenous language. So today I'm going to do a little short presentation. I'm not going to go really into the Garifuna history because it's very lengthy and it's hard to summarize it, but just a little bit. Garifuna people are those African descendants that Christopher Columbus stumbled across when he discovered America. So we were there when he arrived. We were there for over, centuries. When he found us there, he wrote about it. These people resemble the people of the Conquest. But we will never hear about that here in America. So anyway, Garifuna people and indigenous people my language is my Native American tongue, is what I spoke to you earlier, is my mother's language, and I proudly wear my father's skin, who is from Africa. So we are always having to struggle with identity, not us per se, but people who look at us. Because unfortunately, when they look at us, they want to put us in a category. Either you're black or you're Latino or whatever. Being from Central America with a last name Morales, oh, well, your slave master must have been Hispanic. But quick story, when we landed to Roatan after we were exiled, in order for the Catholic Church to help us, they forced us to get baptized and give us, Spanish last names. So that's why you'll see Garifuna people. If you know in Central America, there's two basically black not indigenous groups. We consider ourselves indigenous because if you know the history of Central America, we were there before all of those countries became countries. So you have the Creole people who are, of course, the descendants of slaves. I think they now refer to themselves as Black English in Belize and in some places. And then we have the Garifuna people, who were the free people who were forced to take Spanish names by the Catholic Church, and that's what happened around us. So we're gonna go into my presentation. Can you hear me? Okay. So we're gonna go into my presentation, Garifuna mask dance and other traditional dances. Now, all of this is based on the oral history of the Garifuna elders and the writings of Garifuna historian, Professor Salvador Suazo. Professor Salvador Suazo entrusted GAHFU to carry on his work and legacy by continuing to re-educate the world about the Garifuna people. And I say re-educate because here in the United States, majority of you have never heard about Garifuna people. But because of our long history with the Europeans, where we fought them for over 150 years, they actually they've studied us. They have like a whole study department about Garifuna history in Europe and England and Germany, you know, so they know about it. So it's up to us to re-educate people here in America. Garifuna people are descendants of indigenous Afro-Caribbean, including the Lobono, Dalina, and African explorers from Mali. Our ancestors were exiled from our homeland, Yurume, St. Vincent, in 1797 and relocated to the Port Royal, Honduras. Back then, it was English territory. And again, right there, we didn't have like Honduras, Guatemala, all of those were just basically free states that Spanish and the Europeans were just fighting over whose territory is what. I always like to start off my presentations with, of course, drums. You know, you can't beat drums. So this is a band from Guatemala playing traditional Garifuna drums. A typical Garifuna dance ensemble consists of gayusas, which are singers. Of course, we have our primera and our segundo drummers. Our big drum we call the niki, which is the heartbeat. So when you beat the drum, it sounds like a heartbeat. So our big drum is called the niki, and we usually use those. Those are like a typical drums, this size over here. But then the one in the middle is usually used for spiritual ceremony to like really reach the spirits and everything like that. It tends to be this big, you know, as big as a table or something like that for the temple use. And then we also have, as you saw, we have the shakas or the sisira, which you saw him shaking. And we also have the turtle shell. Not all the time do they have turtle shell, and not all the time we could get them here to the United States for, you know, reasons. And then we have the wadabuge, which is the, you know, the cone. Oh, I'm sorry. Ooh, I forgot about that. My apologies. So we have the Garifuna dance ensemble consists of gayusa, singers, primera, and segundo drummers. Sisira, which is a shaker, sometimes a turtle shell, and a wadabuge player, which is, you know, a cone shell. So, in the Garifuna culture, we do not have Carnival. When Kathy first initially contacted me, I was like, okay, so I don't know if you really want that. But we don't do Carnival, you know. And she was like, no, we want the Garifuna involved, so I appreciate that. So, so we don't do Carnival, but in the past 10 years, I'll have to say that some of the Garifuna communities or the communities in Central America have adopted a form of Carnival. And for example, I believe I did my research to find out if I could give you this information. In Dambriga, Belize, in Belize City, La Ceiba, and Roatan Island in Honduras, Bluefields in Nicaragua, and of course our motherland, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They've been doing carnivals forever in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but in those other places, they just started to adopt that like maybe 10 years ago. And you'll see like people putting the beads on and different things now. They're starting to do like the whole feather thing, but that wasn't something that we did 10 years ago. It's just been adopted, you know, and that's only, again, in a few places. But in some of the few Garifuna like celebrations, you're starting to see people like incorporate like what are those, the beads, like from Mardi Gras towards their costumes. So they're incorporating, you know, little things here and there, but it's not something that we normally do. Okay, and what I'll say about the Garifuna mask, what you'll see throughout the different presentation, is when you see a Garifuna mask like the one that you have over there, it's basically just a depiction of we don't call them colonizers per se, we call them occupiers. Because again, we were there when they got there, and they occupied our territory, which they still do, because we've been living in exile for over 225 years still. You know, so again, Garifuna people, part of the history, I'm not gonna go into the whole thing, but we fought 3 wars, you know, well, I'd say one battle and 2 wars with the Europeans for over 150 years. After 150 years, with the help of the United States, who sent, you know, troops over there to help defeat us, we were, you know, finally captured and exiled in 1797. And we were transported, you know, to Roatan again. So when we do a procession, it's called Yurume, which is a homecoming. That's the name of our land that we call St. Vincent is Yurume. So we do a procession or a parade, and it's a reenactment of when we landed to the Honduras. When we landed there, we were barely alive because the Europeans have poisoned our food, they put cyanide in our food. Because of course, when we were charged, our official crime was treason against the British Empire. And we were sentenced to death. But they decided to spare us and just exile us to our, you know, to our new land, and told us, hey, leave here, you guys can have this land. But you know what, the Europeans, they make treaties with you, and then they go ahead and they break them. So anyway, when we landed over there, we were barely alive, you know, and we just kind of do this whole reenactment to remember where we came from, what we went through, and how from 2,500 people who landed in Roatan, we have over 300,000 living Garifuna people now throughout the United States and back home. So I'm gonna show just a little brief demonstration of the procession, but what it looks like in Guatemala, Honduras, and Belize, it looks totally different. In this particular Yurume procession, this is a blessing. So this is the opening of one of our events in South Central LA on 54th and Hoover. 54th and Hoover, and we are, you know, blessing with the Yurume. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the video. Let's see if I get it right.
Click it in this one.
So the Garifuna dances with masked characters. I'm only going to focus on 3 right now because of the time and everything like that. So the first one is called a Chicken Nugget. It's a processional meme and a dance ritual with accompaniment provided by drums, harmonica, and a blowing conch shell. The ritual features characters like Two-Foot Cow, a devil, other stock characters, and is performed during the Christmas season with the Monaragua. Chicken Nugget begins on December 26th. But depending on where you go, if you go to Guatemala or Honduras or Belize, it's gonna look a little different. You know, so I'm gonna show the video after I give a description of all of the different things. And then after we see the video on Chicken Nugget, we're gonna also see an example about Monaragua. Wanargwa, this is known as the war dance of the Garifuna people. It emerged during the colonial days and it symbolizes the struggle against the European man. It ridicules the expansionistic pretensions of the man to colonize abroad at the expense of Garifuna people. Wanargwa attire symbolizes the traditional European colonial clothing, used in masks depicting the Caucasian features, as well as vividly colorful crowns worn on their head, which they depict as the appearance of the king in the European colonial era. Wanargwa is also known in Honduras as the mask dance. And the last video you're gonna see in regards to mask characters is called the Bursalami. This rhythm is well known as Bursulama, Garibatai, and it is a pantomime comedy or farce dance where in the festive scene, men are courting women. All the men dispute all of the women at the present, but one of the members is singled out by both the men and the women. This is an exclusive dance for the men, where some of the men dress up as men and some dress up as women. So the first dance you're gonna see is the Chicken Nugget. Correction, the first dance that you're seeing is the Wahini dance. This usually precedes the Wanargwa dances during the Christmas time. And Wahini is usually, they start on December 24th. The one thing with Garifuna traditional dances, especially costume dances, they're usually done during the season. It used to be that you can't just, put on these different costumes and do it throughout the year. You have to basically do it on specific days. But of course, with tourism and everything in, Central America, a lot of these traditions are now just basically part of the tourism, unfortunately. So that was the Wahini that you were doing. Traditional Garifuna Wanargwa outfit. And the reason the men dressed like women, it was during the time when we were fighting the Europeans. What we noticed is that what the Garifuna noticed is that when they would go inside when the Europeans would go inside the villages, they would kill the men and they would leave the women alone. So one of the tactics that the men developed was that they would sit there and dress up like women. And to deceive the Europeans into thinking that the men had already leave ahead of the attack. And then so they would dress up like women, sit there in their cuts and everything like that, and be thoughtful and just, let the Europeans, put their guards down. Once they entered the center of the town, that's when they would attack them. So actually Wanargwa is considered a warrior dance. And then we wear the mask over there that you see, we're depicting the Europeans. Because now when we do the dance, it's basically, just like recreating, what we did. So the dances are like battle moves. And then when you have the chief of the Wanargwa dancer, right now we don't have a chief, but usually you'll know the chief because he has a sword. And then one of the customs of the Wanargwa is when one of the dancers passed away, you have the ceremony where all of the dancers gather and they dance in front of the casket. And then the chief gives the sword and he lays it in the coffin with one of the fallen warriors. I didn't want to put that video on because I know people are sensitive about death, so I didn't want to do that, but it's a beautiful ceremony to see. We just did one in February in Los Angeles.
Can we put the music down just a little bit so we can hear her more?
The music?
Sure. When you speak into the mic closer, because the music is too loud.
So this is performed in Honduras and Guatemala. It's called the Garifuna. And Honduras and Guatemala has more variation of traditional mass dance that are not typically performed in Belize, including the Piamati, the Wawani, the Indio Barbaro, and this particular dance. Also in Belize, the dances which are done differently or not performed at all in other Garifuna communities. For example, I'm sure being from the Caribbean and so what, a lot of people are familiar with like the quadrille. You know, so the quadrille is basically the oral history that we get from the quadrille is that during the time of Christmas, the slave owners used to basically teach their slaves how to dance. And then during that time, whichever plantation had like the better slaves that knew how to dance, they would gift them the clothing and stuff like that. That was the history that we got. So Garifuna people would see this and watch, you know, what they did with the Creole, with their slaves and everything like that. And Garifuna loved the music, they loved the dance. So the Garifuna people made the quadrille their own, but that's only done in Belize. You know, and of course Belize used to be a colony. You know, and then the first time when I took a few of my Garifuna relatives from Guatemala and Honduras to see the quadrille dance, they couldn't believe it. You know, they're like, what in the world? This is not part of our Garifuna culture, but it's something that was adopted in Belize, but it's not adopted into other Garifuna culture in Guatemala and Honduras. But this particular dance is called it depends on where you're at, it's called the Diamante or the Corpatia. And that's just, over here, this is the one, again, the Wawani outfit, the Monarco and Jackaloon dancers. In Belize, for a minute, they stopped doing the Wawani because usually the costume is of the leaf, either dry leaf or just regular green leaves. And of course, you know, over time, these used to be sacred dances, but over time, you know, the kids become mischievous, and I know in Belize they stopped it for a minute because they would light the costume on fire.
Oh my God.
Kids being mischievous just to see them run, you know, so so for a minute they stopped doing that particular, the Wawani dance in Belize for a minute. I've since heard from some of my relatives out there that they started it, but in Honduras and Guatemala, they didn't set them on fire, so they continued that tradition. So, I'm going to show you just a little short film about, you know, again, the traditional oral history about Garifuna, which is going to be explained by our board of directors, Dr. Oliver Green.
Tradition that you see in Belize and the tradition you see in Guatemala and Honduras. So we need to talk about just a couple of things about the differences between the two so you'll understand. According to Garifuna oral tradition, Baroda, how many of you know who Baroda was? The wife of Shatuye. Wife of Shatuye insulted her husband by saying about not being enough man and encouraging him. She said she would wear the pants and he would wear the dress. She said the British were invading their communities and burning their cassava fields. So she said, women, we are going to have to dress as men and fight the British. Meanwhile, men, you had better dress as women. Because it's the only way to flee the British at the time that they were in the villages. In response, Chatuye developed a strategy whereby Garifuna men would disguise themselves as women's clothing, put themselves in women's clothing. British entered the Garifuna towns unprepared, not expecting male resistance. They assumed that only women were in the villages, the tradition that you see in Belize and the tradition you see in Guatemala and Honduras. So we need to talk about just a couple of things about the differences between the two so you'll understand. According to Garifuna oral tradition, Baroda, how many of you know who Baroda was? The wife of Shatuye. Wife of Shatuye insulted her husband by saying about not being enough man and encouraged.
So since we're pressed for time, I'm gonna just go ahead and leave this here. This is one of my proudest moments when we returned back to our homeland in 2019. And these are the children in our motherland, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we taught them about the history, about their history, where a lot of them don't know. Because one of the things when they stayed behind, those who remained, they had to forget their language. They couldn't speak their language, they couldn't eat their food, they lost all of their customs. So all of us that were exiled, we maintained the culture, the language, the spirituality, but they lost everything. So this is part of the reacculturation program that we're doing with the people of St. Vincent, where we're teaching them the language, we're teaching them the drumming, we're teaching them the spirituality, and this is we're teaching, right now we're teaching them the dance punta. A lot of people have seen the dance punta and they think that it's like a festive dance, but actually punta is a funeral dance. It's a funeral dance. I can't get into all of it right now, but you know, it is traditionally a funeral dance. And then another dance that we do is conche, which we brought back from Uruguay. We learned that from the French during our time with them. We lived longer with the French than we did the British and the Spanish. So a lot of these dances, you know, over here that we do traditionally, like especially the punta, is started in Uruguay, our homeland, and we're just bringing it back to them because if you know in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they know about the wine. You know, I don't do wine. I don't know how to wine. I know how to punta, but I don't know how to, you know, I don't know how to work that way. So I can work my feet. But if you want to see all of these videos and learn more about GAHFU, please visit our GAHFU channel, GAHFU, and you'll be able to learn more about my culture. And I want to just thank Kathy and everybody for making me and for bringing me here and having us be part of this, you know, unique experience. Thank you. Wow. Bravo.